Why do people burn in hell prior to the judgment at the great white throne? What I believe this question is asking is, people in hell suffer, right? Because when you think of Luke 16, is the judgment part of hell today a place of torment? And it is, based upon Luke 16. The rich man in Luke 16 was in torment. So this person is asking, why do people burn in hell prior to the judgment at the great white throne? Here would be my answer to that. Man's criminal proceedings are necessary to determine guilt or innocence for human affairs. So what I mean by that is, do we just let the government just grab people and execute them without any due process? And typically the answer is no, right? Typically what happens is there is some sort of legal proceeding to determine the person's guilt before they're just punished. It's called due process, right? And that's a good idea. It's a check on the power of the government. And it's just prudent to do things in that way. One of the reasons that should exist, are there ever times where the wrong person is charged? That happens, right? Because there are mistakes in human affairs. So my point is, in human affairs, it is necessary to have due process or some sort of proceeding before you impose sentence, because humans get things wrong. We make mistakes. Sometimes testimony is inaccurate. Is that the same with God? Is God waiting for the great white throne to figure out if the lost are guilty? He's not, right? He already knows. Look at me at 1 John 3, verse 20. 1 John chapter 3 and verse 20. 1 John 3 and verse 20. For if our heart condemn us, God is greater than our heart, notice this, and knoweth all things. So how many things does God know? He knows all of them. There's nothing that is hid from him. Because there is nothing that is hid from God, when someone dies who is lost, God knows their guilt, and he knows they deserve punishment, and so they go to hell to begin receiving their punishment. That's what happens. So then, what is the purpose of the great white throne? God doesn't need the great white throne to convince him that the lost are guilty. He's already well aware of that. The great white throne is a public declaration to the universe as to the guilt of the lost. What God does immediately after the great white throne is the lost are cast into the lake of fire. There is no escape from the lake of fire. They're going to be there forever. So what God does is he gives the universe assurance of his righteousness, assurance of his justice before people are cast into the lake of fire. That's what's happening at the great white throne judgment. The great white throne judgment also does this. It reveals the unknown evils that man performed on the earth. In man's way of thinking, he may think the lake of fire is too harsh. It's too awful, and it lasts too long. And it shouldn't be like that. What God does at the great white throne is he reveals, he demonstrates the degree of guilt of all of the lost, and therefore demonstrates to the universe that they deserve the punishment they are about to receive. The other thing I'll just say on that, people always, one of the things that's fascinating, people love murder mysteries. And they love, for example, there's different programs on unsolved crimes. And, people have great interest, who really did it? The great white throne resolves all of those issues. All of the crimes of humanity are revealed in terms of who did them. Now, I should clarify that's only for the lost, because the saved do not stand in judgment at the great white throne. You're already been your new body at that point in time. So that is, as best I understand it, the explanation of how God can justly send people to hell before the great white throne judgment. He's fully aware and has complete understanding and integrity and knowledge as to their guilt and the loss deserving of being punished.